a podcast with Kawaljit Singh Bedi. Kawaljit is a former NDTV honcho. He used to be the Chief Technology and Product Officer. Did I get that right, Kawaljit?
That's right.
Right. And after leaving NDTV with two of his senior colleagues, they started their own startup by the name of Frammer AI. Today's show is going to be on artificial intelligence. I think I can safely say, like a lot of people, I'm also quite impressed with artificial intelligence, yet quite overwhelmed. There's just so much out there and it's changing so rapidly that perhaps we've not taken the time to familiarize ourselves, I think I can safely say. And I think I can also say it's quite daunting. So today we're going to treat our session as a masterclass where the AI expert, Kawaljit, will take us through what it's like and how we can apply it in our day-to-day lives. I'm also hoping that after the end of the session, we are all equipped and well qualified to apply for jobs as AI techies. Just kidding. But really, it is to use AI, its tools, in day-to-day life. So over to you, Kawaljit. Welcome, firstly.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for making time, and brace yourself. They're going to be a volley of questions. A bit like we're in school and, ask you what, where, why. So please take the floor and help us unpack what artificial intelligence is all about. So firstly, I think we should start with what is artificial intelligence?
Okay, so start with, in simple terms, artificial intelligence would be machines mimicking humans.
Okay.
Basically learning, acting, thinking like humans to perform complex tasks. So complex tasks would be problem solving, trying to understand natural language, being creative. You've seen examples of how creative AI has been with generating images and videos.
Right.
So those were like the domain of humans. So AI is mimicking that, and it's kind of assisting humans right now in performing those kind of tasks. So artificial intelligence, in simple terms, is like behaving like humans.
Wow.
Machines behaving like humans. Yeah.
Quite different to Google searching, right? Because when you do a Google search, you put in something, it throws an answer.
Yeah.
But it's more like a textbook definition, as opposed to Google search mimicking.
Yeah.
So that's quite different.
Yeah, what's happening is AI is actually helping Google and many other companies improve their product. So Google search actually now relies on AI for better results. Right. So what used to be just what is called machine learning, that you have billions of pages indexed in Google, you look for something, it will find the closest matching page and just serve you up.
Yeah.
Now AI actually helps you answer the question directly. It doesn't need to even serve the page. It can actually summarize the content on that page. It can pull out the relevant information and upfront that for you. You don't have to go through what is typically called 10 links that Google used to give. Yeah. So AI actually is embedded in Google now and many other companies in different use cases, but it's actually an assistant rather than kind of competing services now. Now AI actually helps you kind of write the whole thing out, right? So it's predicting or helping you with not just the next word, but finishing your sentences.
Wow.
Yeah.
So quite fascinating how it can think of what you might be thinking.
Yeah.
Quite intuitive.
Yeah. So artificial intelligence actually technically works like that if there's enough data being fed into these machines, they start recognizing patterns. And when you talk about the data being fed into these kind of what are called models, AI models, they have actually pretty much ingested the whole of internet, and you can imagine how big that would be. Trillions of data pieces, exabytes of data being ingested. So, and when machines go over it, they start recognizing the pattern. So this predictive analysis or autocomplete or finishing your thoughts happens because most of the things humans do right now, already something has been put out on the internet which these machines have learned. Right. So when you start saying, Jack in the, so there is somewhere on the internet, the next word would be box, right?
Right.
So when you start typing, there's a very good chance it already knows what you're trying to say and it will help you complete it. So when
Right.
you do questions like, think of like anything like which is the best TV to buy, it has already indexed every piece of review of that television on the internet and it can actually start answering. So what has happened is this pattern recognition has gone on so far and so deep that it feels like magic, that it is actually like a
Yeah.
human mimicking it.
Wow.
So like I'm sure we can dig deeper about artificial general intelligence and things
Yeah.
like that. But right now, where the LLMs or these AI models are limited, are that these information is what has already been put out, on the internet. So it can only go so far in actually finishing our sentences or completing a thought, because that's already been done by a human before.
Right.
The next frontier would be when it can come up with new science or new maths or new kind of information which humans have not thought of. So we'll get into that.
Step
Yeah,
by
we'll
step.
get
Just
into
for
that.
viewers, would you explain what LLM is?
Yeah, large learning models. It's
Okay.
basically the model on the AI model has been built on large amounts of data. So it's called
Okay.
large learning models. There are concepts like SML, small learning model, SLMs, small learning model.
Okay.
But large means that it's pretty much the entire of internet or
Okay.
like very vast amounts of data. LLM word is actually telling you that it's text,
Right.
it's data ingested in text format,
Right.
and it's very large.
Okay.
So it can answer any kind of question, from movie reviews to health problems to financial information. So it's that large that it can answer any kind of question. The
Right.
small learning models are like specific to domain. So you may say only on medical, things
Right.
it can answer. On other topics, it would just say, I don't know.
Okay.
And then there are other concepts like diffusion, which we'll get to.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Okay.
Too many technical terms, but
too
we'll try to
much.
keep it
Step
simple.
by step.
Yeah.
So when you say systems and machines, is it somebody like a coder developing software which is being put into computers? And you talked about ingesting information. Who's putting this information into
Yeah.
those machines, into that software?
Yeah.
How does that process happen behind the scenes?
Yeah. So, till AI kind of became mainstream, which is, I think, around end of 22 when OpenAI, I think right now the flagship kind of AI company, launched what is now obviously everyone knows called ChatGPT, which
Yeah.
was their kind of front end to their AI models. The typical programming of the last 30 years was always about, like an if then else kind of decision making programming, which is that
Right.
you write what a user may want. So you can say,
Right.
if this happens, do this. If this happens, do that. So the programming was very structured. When
Okay.
AI came in, that's where it started changing, where that it's kind of natural language. You don't have to specifically go down a path.
Okay.
You can ask any question. You can go down any kind of rabbit hole on that topic, and you can
Yeah.
keep going. So the programmer doesn't have to be very specific on on a certain kind of decision tree that normally programming is. And behind the scenes, what's happening is that large companies, typically it would be the Googles and the Amazons and the OpenAIs of the world, which is doing this hard work, which is ingesting so much information so that these models can answer the question. It requires a lot of money,
Yeah.
energy, time to do this kind of processing of so much data, that it can be very open and generic.
Right.
And only large kind of institutes or large VC-backed companies can do it. That's why it's very hard to find lot of AI models right now.
Right.
In the world there will probably be 4 or 5 big companies doing it. So it would
Right.
be, if I can count
yeah,
them.
please list them. There's Sam Altman
Right.
for OpenAI,
Correct.
who founded this in San Francisco.
That's
So
right.
my research says.
Right.
And his company is called OpenAI.
OpenAI is
but
the company.
he launched that
ChatGPT.
ChatGPT.
That's right.
And I believe their Chinese cheaper equivalent is DeepSeek.
That's right.
Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay.
I'll break it up. So there's a concept called open source and closed source.
Okay.
So what's happening is that someone who has funding,
Right.
like OpenAI with
Right.
ChatGPT, Or you look at, there's a company called Anthropic who launched a model called Claude.
Okay.
There's obviously Google with their model called Gemini. These are very large companies with a lot of backing, fund-based backing, and Google obviously has their own funds where they started training, and those models which they have trained are proprietary to them. No one can see how or what goes behind the scenes.
Right.
They kind of know the technologies used to build these models, but people can't see the source code or understand what they're doing.
Right.
Then there's a concept called open source, where the companies which are building open source models on these technologies actually put the code out. So if you are a programmer, you can actually see what they're doing and why their models behave a certain way. Open source companies normally would either be backed by other, crowdfunding kind of ways of, people contributing to that code or that company, or there would be obviously VC backers who would think that the models can be available to everyone, but they may be able to make money by servicing customers, right? Like charging only for the servicing. So these are the two kinds of ways where you can create these large language models. And in this field, you rightly said, OpenAI with ChatGPT, DeepSeek, which is a Chinese open source model. So OpenAI, while it's called OpenAI, is closed source.
Oh, yeah.
DeepSeek, which is a Chinese model, is open source.
Okay.
Like I mentioned, Anthropic, closed source with Claude, Google with Gemini, closed source.
Right.
Then there's a company called Mistral, which is a European open source model.
Okay.
In India, there's a company called Sarvam, which is actually building a large language model for the Indian market.
Oh, fantastic.
That's closed source right now, but they have some announcements that they will be open source as well.
Okay.
But you can count them on your 10 fingers. That's about it on terms of who can afford or who have put out these models. There are obviously maybe hundreds and thousands, if not millions of companies now using these models to create more AI companies, which we can come to. But actually these AI models are very expensive to build. That's why there are a handful of them only.
Yeah. Have you heard of this gentleman called Aravind Srinivas? I believe he's an Indian chap in San Francisco.
Yes.
And he's launched a company called Perplexity.
Perplexity.
No, can't get
Perplexity.
it. Perplexity.
Yes. I had a hard time also.
Yeah, it's because I'm on the podcast. I do get it right otherwise. And so is he quite a known entity?
Now he is. Actually, what he did, he doesn't have a model of his own. They may have done some bit of training on models, but he relies on all these big companies like ChatGPT or OpenAI and Anthropic and Gemini to power his application. So he is using these models to create a new search engine. That's how he began. There are many more features on his app now.
Right.
He actually, in fact, is an ex-employee of OpenAI. He either interned or he worked with OpenAI for some time.
Right.
Then he started his own company, which was basically to kind of solve what people were seeing Google not do, which is that typically someone goes to Google and there is, I'm sure, a large percentage of people who are not looking to browse websites. They want an answer, right? Kind of an answer engine they were looking for. That if I ask a question, just tell me the answer. I don't want to go to websites and learn it on my own. Just tell me if I ask a question. So his product, the Perplexity startup, created an app where you did that. You would just put a question. It would, scour the internet, find the answer, give it up front. And then it would give you the links if you wanted to dig deeper. That if I ask question A and you get an answer, if you're happy with the answer, that's it. You can close the app. If you want to know more, there were links so that you can click on it and actually do further research. Right. So this obviously solved a kind of a gap in the market where there were no good answer engines. And that's why that company took off and, they had a huge kind of what is called a J-curve adoption of that app, and obviously they got a lot of funding backed by some big companies. I think Amazon is one of the backers for Perplexity.
Yes. Perplexity.
Yes.
Perplexity. I got it. But what is the difference between what they're doing vis-a-vis ChatGPT is doing?
Yeah.
Can I just go online and access ChatGPT, or do I have to subscribe to it, pay for it?
Yeah. For both Perplexity and ChatGPT, they have free tiers. What is basically that if you're a casual user, you don't have to pay. You just log on to their websites. Both of them have kind of similar interface where there's just a box. You can go and type a question and you get an answer.
Right.
Like I mentioned, ChatGPT is just a front end to the AI model that OpenAI created. Okay. So really it's like a chat bot. You put in a question, it will give you an answer. It's very generic in nature. So, ChatGPT normally would answer any kind of question you would put, from health and finance and legal to, kind of personal questions. It can answer anything. Perplexity is a little more tuned towards an answer engine. So it could help you make decisions, like if you want to buy a shoe, you could just say that I'm looking for a shoe which is, let's say, for flat-footed people. This is the size. I'm in UK and I do running. So it can actually pinpoint you and take you directly to a shoe buying experience, right? So it's kind of tailored towards that. ChatGPT would just say, if you want to buy a shoe for this purpose, look for these kind of shoes. These are the popular brands. It won't probably take you there,
like
although I'm sure
combo of ChatGPT and Google search, probably.
That's right.
Something like that.
And
right?
actually, that's why Perplexity actually doesn't have its model which is like open to everyone. They are just fine-tuning these models which have been built by bigger companies to serve a certain purpose. And like majority of AI companies in the world do this, which is just behind the scenes leverage these models which have been made by, like I said, these 10-15 big companies and kind of solve a problem. They are not like generic models. They're trying to serve a purpose, that if you are in HR and you are looking for job resumes, there will be a company which will service that exactly for that purpose, helping you narrow down job searches, right? There will be one serving medical, there will be one serving legal. So most AI companies actually are what are called vertical SaaS, software as a service. Vertical, which means they are specifically solving for a certain kind of industry, whereas the big tech companies which are doing these models are generic. You can ask anything. They are not specifically trying to service an industry.
So going back to what you said, which I think viewers will find helpful, when you do a Google search and you're looking for something, it'll give you options. And then the onus is on you to go through those links and come up with something which is very suitable to your requirements.
Right.
Whilst AI or Perplexity or ChatGPT will actually narrow it down for you and tell you exactly what you need based on your requirements. So that's quite a movement.
Yes. But what has changed is Google obviously is not going to be left behind. So now if you go to Google, they have something called AI mode, where there's a large kind of box which pops up right on top, which is actually now competing with Perplexity and many other of these AI companies, where they also now actually give you an answer right on top. So they are not leaving you to do the research yourself and go to these sites. They are also kind of summarizing, helping you find out of all those links that they already know about which one answers the question.
Right.
And then they show it up front, and then they will give you a link so that if you want to further deep down, you can go there.
So how is that going to be different, given they're taking it one level up? Different to Google's Gemini artificial intelligence and their DeepMind.
Right. Okay. So, Google is a very large company. We obviously think of Google as search, but already they do Gmail and they have Android and they have their phones and they do bunch of stuff, right? So Google, actually the name of the company is Alphabet now, and Google is just one part of it. So Alphabet is the parent company under which there's Google and DeepMind and many of their products, right? So if you just break it up, Google, which we just say Google, but it's still a company, is predominantly known for search.
Right.
They have other, they have an operating system called Android. They have obviously Gmail for email. They have Gemini, which is their AI model. But what Google has done well is kind of integrate all of them. So if you go to the Android operating system, it has Google search built into it. It has Gemini, which is like powering the whole phone, where you can do many things. Even the camera uses the Gemini model to create better images. So, they have done a great integration. So it's very hard to kind of now say it's, Gemini is different from Android, is different from Google search, because as a company, they've done well to integrate all the pieces. But what is important for users to know is that they need to have a seamless experience. They, no one cares about these product names. Really what they want is if they use the phone, it should do what they want. If they go to Google search, they get the answer. If they go to Gmail, they find the mail they were looking for. But Google has done a good job of integrating. It's actually typically been done well by most of the big tech companies. So Google, with these products, is competing with Apple, which has its own set of products. They have the iPhone, they have their, Apple Maps, Apple Music. They have their own ecosystem. They also rely on a lot of AI. You go to Amazon, they have their search engine. So all these companies have various products which they integrate well. Each of them have their ecosystem. That's why people actually get attached to the ecosystem. If you are an Apple or a Microsoft user, you will typically have most of their products, right?
Right.
If you use
True.
Windows machine, you are typically in that environment, so you will use Microsoft Office, you will maybe use Bing, may not be big in India, but you'll use their search engine. So, the big companies do well with integrating their products.
Okay. So going back a step, basic question.
Mm-hmm.
What is a chatbot?
Chatbot is AI models which have a natural language front end. Like typically if you had to do any Google search, you had to learn the trick to write the queries on Google, right? Like if you couldn't just write, I want to go to a holiday in Europe in July, let me know the dates, or let me know the best cities to go to, right? Like you would just use keywords, you would say summer holiday, Spain, and then it would give you a result. What AI has done is it allows you to write in natural language. You can write full sentences. You can talk to it as if it was like some personal friend you were talking to. So that is kind of what the chatbot of today is, which is it lets you chat. It's a bot. Bot comes from robot, so it's like a chat robot.
That's interesting.
And it actually can answer your question as if you were talking to a human.
Very interesting. I never knew that's the name, chat and robot.
Yeah.
Wow. Chatting to a robot.
Yeah.
So how is it different to a virtual assistant? When you go into some of these is a customer service, they're trying to get rid of people, have few people. So wherever you go, and personally I find it quite frustrating at times because some things you can't explain.
Yeah.
And they give you a set, a menu. So they'll say, pick from this.
Yes.
If it's this, then pick from that.
Yes.
So how is a virtual or digital assistant different to a chatbot?
Yeah, actually, these are different terms used for kind of the same thing, which is trying to answer like customer service questions, right? When you are frustrated with a virtual assistant, it's typically have been built over the last 5 to 10 years using traditional ways of what I described as programming, which
Coding.
is if do this, then this is the answer. If you do this is the answer. What's happening is there's a shift now. If you go to kind of the newer age technology companies, or if you have companies which have leveraged AI better, like some banks have in India, I'm sure there are kind of FMCG brands or some kind of service industry where they have integrated AI well. Those same virtual assistants won't be that frustrating as you would have experienced because they have these chatbots which are AI backed. So when it is AI backed, they do a better job of answering. It's not that frustrating. And if you think about it, what used to be just text-based interactions with, these companies also was even more frustrating when it was caller-based, right? Like you would call someone, you would have to hold for like 15 minutes before you could get a person on call. You could feel the frustration of that person because they have been handling, maybe hundreds of calls that day, and they are trying to quickly close the call because they have some kind of quota on how many queries they can take. Even those frustrations go away as AI takes over because AI are infinitely scalable. They can handle as many questions. They will always be patient. They have a larger repository of data to help them answer questions. They can always pass it on to a human if they can't kind of leverage their data or information to solve a query. So those experiences will get better. As AI gets integrated more and more in these services, things will change. But to your original questions, those virtual assistants and the chatbots and the customer service, they're all gonna get kind of backed by AI, and those frustrations and those experiences will get better.
Right. Yeah. There has to be some limitations.
Right.
Or some things which would not agree with humans.
Right.
What are those?
You go to ChatGPT, Gemini, you go to any of these models and you say some random thing like in 1970 this person jumped from a plane. Who is this person? They typically won't say we don't know. Even if it was a fictitious question you invented, they will try to answer it.
Yeah.
This is where something called hallucinations come in, where they'll just come up with answers.
Right.
So this is a huge limitation because AIs have to be trained more and more to say no. Right now the models are built so that they can always answer questions, so they hallucinate. Which means that you cannot really rely on AI for everything. So this trust or fact checking or being correct all the time is kind of a big limitation right now. There is a lot of work being done so that they don't hallucinate. So that's a limitation. Second is, as creative as they may get, they are still being trained on pictures or photos or videos humans have created, right? So there is a limitation on their creativity. You may say they are amazing because they are better than us individually, but they will never be better than the real masters who originally created that
Humans.
art or the yes. So that limitation is there. And then if you think about it, AI doesn't kind of understand the zeitgeist of that place or that time, right? You can say create a photo and make it in Dali kind of format or make it Van Gogh style and it will do it. But what is popular today, what the kids want or what that culture, city, time requires, they can't do it, right? So that's still driven by humans, like the cultural significance, the viral moments, the memes, the fashion, those are still
The
driven
creativity
by
as well,
yeah,
right?
That's the thing on creativity. It's such a vast field to think about. You can ask an AI to create a image and they will always be better than what you can create, but that creativity is limited to what humans have already done. The creativity to push boundaries, to create new things, to influence, right?
But that's also a second-hand creativity. It's somebody who's already done it,
Correct.
and then AI or whatever has picked that up
Right.
and given it. So
Right.
it's not original creativity.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And like the kind of a meta point here, or if you look at the big picture, is that humans are driven by purpose, right? And AI is driven for kind of task solving. There's a
Correct.
huge difference
Yeah.
in artificial intelligence versus human intelligence. And while there will be discussions of AI taking over our jobs and what will happen, like the purpose they don't have, like AI is till they reach some super intelligence is
Yeah.
like they are just being following orders that humans will
Correct.
give them. Yeah.
I mean, I don't think so that they would replace humans or we necessarily need to feel threatened because even to give that command, you need a human. I mean, that would be a bit much that a robot is coming and giving the
Well,
command.
you haven't seen enough sci-fi movies then.
Well, yeah, I guess so. I'm not
Where
a
they take
sci-fi.
over.
Yeah, the takeover of the
Yeah.
planet.
Yeah.
But I recall, in the late 80s and early 90s.
Yeah. So can I interject there because there's a very funny thing to think about that while we say AI won't do it, AI is trained on all the things humans have created, including sci-fi movies where we have said this is how AI takes over humanity.
Right.
So they know that. They have
But that's a
that
movie.
data.
That we know
But
is
a
fiction.
lot of actually if you think about it, a lot of innovation in human history
Yeah.
has been based on ideas which humans came up as fiction.
True.
Like for some person, Isaac Asimov, in the 1960s writing that this is what 2020s will look like it's kind of manifesting,
Right.
Scientists and experts started building a future which matched his vision. So
Right.
kind of manifest, right? So when
Yeah.
we say like Terminator and, robots will realize humans are not good for Earth and they will take over so that they save the Earth is something AI actually has learned and
Right.
it can manifest. So let's not get
So we
think
might
they will
be
always you can
shooting
shut them
ourselves in
off.
the foot
Yes.
by doing that. But I do remember a time, late 80s, early 90s, when computers came in. And everybody was very worried because it was something so new
Right.
that they thought they'd lose their jobs, it'll be redundant, but it wasn't that.
Yeah.
Right? We used it to our advantage
Yeah.
and to better our life and to better the way we worked.
Right.
And I think AI, I like to think, be hopeful, would do something similar, if
Yeah.
not more.
Yeah.
We definitely are going through the next big technological revolution, for
That's true.
sure.
That's true.
You
You look at all these like any kind of revolution, even industrial revolution, it's always that worry that like these machines will come or cars have come, what will happen to horses and the carriage and the
Yeah.
the technologies of that time, and it's all gonna get. But every technology revolution has created more jobs, has made human life better. So that continues, and with AI also, that's what you would imagine would happen. But this transition period is always hard, right?
Yeah.
With AI, it's happening too fast,
True.
so it's so clear to us. Normally, it would take like a decade for things to move. You can see things
Correct.
happening in the last 3 years which are very disruptive. So,
Yeah.
kind of, if you think about it, like the transition period will be hard. Second, governments and society has to do reskilling. But if you
Right.
just kind of look back, what AI is doing is it's entering every field, right? other kind of revolutions have impacted industries which are specific, right? Like if kind of these car technology comes, that whole thing gets disrupted. If robots come, like
True.
industry gets disrupted. AI is actually going to enter every field.
True.
So while you may think that it's going to disrupt jobs and what will humans do if AI takes over, you have to consider that all the places AI comes in, someone has to build those things, right?
Correct.
So there will be new jobs and new kind of requirements for humans to adapt to, which is basically reskilling, right? Like if everything is driven by computers and AI, someone has to still write that.
Correct.
Right? Like our company also, it creates new opportunities, and that's the optimistic view about AI, disrupting the current generation, right?
It is fascinating, no doubt. But is there like a limit, or is it just so vast?
Yeah, I mean, we have seen, at least in my generation, I have seen so many of these kind of revolutions, right? From, at least I can say for myself, from computers entering, like our homes, to internet, to mobile phone, to mobile phones, to apps, and now AI. I have seen so many of these.
Yeah.
This one feels a little different. It feels like it's everywhere.
Right.
You like. Just to think about it, every phone has AI now, and there are like 5 billion phones. So everyone is exposed to AI just by having access to a phone, right? And you can see how phones impact anyways, right? So from the photos you take to kind of notifications to weather to apps you use, everything is now touched upon by AI on that side, like how humans get touched, and then in their day-to-day lives. And then you see the industries we use, service industries, technology, kind of media, you look at legal, you look at pharma, you look at, all of them have been touched by AI. So this one feels much bigger.
But it is a bit scary, and this links to your hallucinations bit, right? You could give a photograph, and I saw this, somebody doing this with AI, and they said, what is this? And it just went off and created a beautiful story.
Right.
So whilst it was beautiful and like awe-inspiring, like wow, equally it was a bit worrying that you've created something which is not true.
Yeah.
So there is that limitation or flip side or something we need to be careful.
Yes.
And I guess it becomes more when you apply it in the medical industry,
Yes.
right? With doctors. We can't say that AI is going to replace doctors or even medical investigation.
Yes.
They may be very good with radiology, reading reports.
And you can see those numbers, right? Like the accuracy of AI predicting cancer or some diagnosis is much better than humans. So you can see that, but if a false positive or a false negative,
Correct.
will, how impactful that could be. So it's true. But with every technology, actually technology kind of goes much faster than regulations do. So you can see this kind of catch up that the industry is now doing on safety, on guardrails, on kind of compliances, and health, especially since you brought up health. Like
it's important, Kawaljit, because I know that when Google came, all of us have become Google-style doctors, right?
Yeah.
And I'm talking specifically with the, on the medical and health side of things. So whilst it's good, like if I'm prescribed a medicine or for my pets, I will always Google the medicine to see what sort it is, how it's going to help, what the side effects are. So that's great.
Yeah.
It's reassuring. But equally, it can take off in an extreme way and list all the possible side effects or create something which may not be true.
Right.
And I've had many, family physician doctors say, don't be a Google doctor. It doesn't have all the answers.
Yeah.
So I think there's a thin line
Yes.
where we have to be careful. And of course, industry specific. So whilst it may be less damaging in a different industry, say transport or manufacturing, just hypothetically speaking. But when it comes to legal and medical, we've got to be careful how we apply it, right?
Yes, and the term Google doctor came before AI was there, right? We were
Right.
already Googling it.
Correct.
Most of the medicines, even a Disprin had some side effect of cancer. Like everything led to you're going to die if you have this medicine.
Yeah.
So this has been going on for a while. I think a lot of it is education, right?
Right.
I know all the doctors I speak to, they tell us don't do it.
Yeah,
If
correct.
you try to Google it, you will find things which have no, bearing on what your condition is or the medicines you are having, and Google or these sites which show up on Google will always have an extreme position or kind of explanation, so you should not do it. The flip side is only AI is making humans more trusting of what they're saying.
Right.
So that's something on the human. So for example, you have seen these cases in US where kids, teenagers started talking to AIs as their own therapists, and letting their heart out on what they're feeling, and that's where it becomes so personal that human own guardrails come down, right? Like if you go to some random site and they say your life is not worth living and you should end it, you will not do it because it's some random site. But
Correct.
if AI, which is like your companion and your therapist, kind of starts nudging you towards it, and there are cases of kids committing suicide or taking bad decisions because they became so trustworthy of their AI companions. That's the real worry, right?
But what about identity theft and things like that? I mean, if it's got so much data on you, that's also not a good thing.
Yeah. So that's why there are worries about, which models you use. Again, like I mentioned, the big ones have, and most of them are US based, and there's a lot of compliance and kind of safety nets that they are building. But if you pick up, let's say, DeepSeek from China, right? Like who's verifying the kind of weights they are trained on? I haven't used it personally, but if you on DeepSeek ask about Tiananmen Square event, right? It's censored, right? Like it doesn't answer, right? So who knows what all has been built into it, right? What training and guardrails are in those models. So kind of you also have to be very careful on what to choose. Obviously there are biases in these models, so you have to be careful on what questions you ask it, right? Because there's no sovereign India model right now yet. So if you ask, let's say you really believe in homeopathy or Ayurveda and you ask ChatGPT, and it will most likely debunk it. It will say those are not trustworthy, they are not real, pseudoscience, all that, right? If there was an Indian sovereign model, it would have more information about these kind of, not saying either is correct or wrong. I mean, personally,
but list the benefits or the limitations or
whatever.
And
like
at least acknowledge it exists.
No, like for example, I don't believe in homeopathy. So if I ask an Indian sovereign model which actually may back it, and we have Ayush and all these other things in India which actually kind of back homeopathy. So a sovereign Indian model may say it works, right? So an American using an Indian model will see that homeopathy works and may want to use it, right? And an Indian person using ChatGPT will get the information it doesn't work, right? So it's kind of what you choose also, right?
Right. But it's also knowing that.
Yes.
So as a layperson, had you not mentioned it, I would not have known.
That's right.
I would just assume. Of course, when the answer comes back and that homeopathy does exist, Ayurveda is very effective for those who've used. Doctors may think otherwise. But, then you would know, ChatGPT is not correct.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So what's happening for parental guidance around that? Are kids allowed to just use AI as they please?
See, these are free websites. Anyone can log in. Most kids these days use it for homework. Kind of self-critical thinking, all that is going away. So many worrying things. But parental guidance is parents' guidance, right? Like literally the parents have to be careful about access to AI, which sites should they allow the kids to go. There are like dark kind of corners of AI also where it's something like everything else. Parents have to make sure kids don't go to. All that is like on the parents. Like everything else, they need to monitor usage.
Would you say that it will limit creativity? For instance, like a child, when we were children, we were given homework, or you were given topics to write an assignment on. So today, if you have access to AI, would you not just go and type and get the answer?
This is a big question for this generation, right? Like what they're learning, because there are some things like in our generation or when I was growing up, as I passed out of school and college, I realized schools have started allowing calculators, right?
I was going to say that,
because they felt like
calculators.
That's not an important skill for a child. The real thing is, can you actually calculate, right? Like the mental maths was not as important as knowing how to deduce an answer, right? Decisions made by school boards, right? It's the same. Like an AI can write a whole essay for you, but that defeats the purpose of essay writing, right? So there are use cases where AI is like, I always felt like history of who the conqueror was or who in what year something happened may not be that important for me, but knowing something happened in the history is important, right? Like things to learn from. So essay writing is very important, right? Because essay writing means you do critical thinking.
Correct.
You actually weigh all the options.
Yeah.
Which ChatGPT does a fantastic job because it knows so much. It can bring in information from everywhere. But that's where I would think for my kids, they should not use it, right?
Correct.
So this kind of, what AI should be used for, where it should not be used for is up to the parents and the schools and the boards to start thinking. You see kids using it as a kind of a shortcut to get good marks, but it is not good for many things. It's useful for many, like understanding concepts. AI is amazing, right? Like what my teachers could never explain, I still kind of look at it and try to understand now, right? Science behind many topics, right? Like AI does a great job of explaining concepts, but essay writing should not be something you use AI for.
Well, because personally, I think you might get good grades in your term test, but when you actually will write the final exam, you'll be at a loss. Because you haven't taught your brain or taught yourself to think, to write, to analyze. And then you use an external source to do that. And then when you're going to write competitive exams, it's going to be very tough.
That's the whole thing. Like, what do you use AI for? Like I said, if it was explaining you concepts, right? If it, like, let's say it was even English literature. If you actually entered, let's say, Shakespeare's poem and said, explain it to me. It's amazing, right? Like, it can break it down. It can explain the language. It can explain characters, right? Which is something a teacher would have done.
I was just going to say that,
right? Like, no tuitions required. You could use such great, amazing tools. But if you are using it to kind of shortcut something you should have learned, not a great tool, right? So critical thinking, or in fact, even more important, learning to learn, right? Is a skill which our generation needs. That how do you learn new things, right? Because how quickly AI is changing things, it's a very important skill to have for the next generation, that they should learn how to learn, right? Because you don't know in 5 years' time, the maths or the English or the history or whatever you're learning may not be useful anymore. Exactly. So
with Gen Z, I wonder, can they even write?
Well,
because they're just doing text.
It's our generation which has given up. Forget the Gen Z. Like, it's so hard to write now. But that's the thing. Like, is that an important skill? Why is writing an important skill? So it's kind of, you have to think about, like, which are the kind of skills you need to preserve. I mean, writing beautifully, calligraphy and all is good.
That's a different thing.
It's a skill to have, but if everything is digitized and you really are using pen and paper only to sign, like,
true, because even when you write diaries, you write it in the computer or in the notes in your phone. So it's really typing. But you wouldn't want your thoughts being fed by somebody else.
That's true.
And even it's not a robot, because the robot is picked from somebody else, but it's somebody else's view, not your own. Second-hand. Correct. So, interesting. So it's got pluses, it's got like with any new thing, right? But you have to use it sensibly. With the checks and balances.
Use the best of it, right? And there will always be dark corners. There has to be safety, guardrails, compliances, all that comes with.
Is that much work happening internationally, like policy wise?
Well, like, it's kind of an arms race right now. You can see, if you talk about AI is not just the models itself. AI is an industry, right? So for every ChatGPT, there are like 10 companies helping ChatGPT build it. So there is, the companies which provide the data for training. There are the chipsets, like NVIDIA is one of the most valuable companies in the world, because those are the chips on which AI is trained. There are like companies like Apple, which uses AI to power its billions of phones it sells, right? So there is a whole industry around it. So like, you have to think of the whole ecosystem when we talk about AI. So
now taking it slightly sideways, but still quite related, within the Indian context. Will we be seeing a lot of this here, or are we just going to be helping the US like we always do, or other countries?
So, if you're specifically talking about AI, then, like I mentioned, AI is two things. One is, what is these foundational models, right? Creating models from scratch. This is where India has lagged and still not one of the big AI companies or AI countries in the world. China
Right.
has done a great job with creating foundational models. US obviously leads from the front. There are many companies in Europe, and the reason India has lagged behind is it is very capital intensive.
I was going to say funding.
Right.
Yeah.
So that way Indians don't take risks, right? Like there are no VCs in India which are putting down hundreds of millions of dollars into a single company knowing it may fail, right? That kind of appetite comes from Silicon Valley or government funding like in China, right?
Right.
You need that kind of funding to make these foundational models.
Like we need to have a research lab.
You
like
need to have
Google
research
has
lab.
and
You have to have
UK
that
has.
risk. The biggest thing is the risk appetite of that kind of money.
Right.
You know, if you put that kind of money anywhere and it goes belly up, are you okay with that? And US, because of its historical wins, right, that they put so much money in startups and so many of them have become so large that they have that appetite to take risk and keep funding it. And you know, that cycle has made so many more new companies that there is always more money in that small pocket of US where, you know, companies can start, fail, try again, fail till they actually succeed. India doesn't have that appetite. So where India has really actually shown is using these technologies to create solutions, right?
Right.
India has hundreds of AI companies using these big models to serve and solve large, you know, global kind of issues, right? We are great at adopting tools. We are great at servicing our cheap labor, you know, if you can say that, and our large kind of population helps us create a lot of industries and value. So India is great at that. You know, like we have companies from India which have done great abroad. It's not just the people, right? Like we have so many of us, that same executive when they move to US are actually just in a better well-funded company. That's why they they look amazing. But that same Sundar Pichai in India or likes of him are doing great here, except that they are not known because the funds are much less here, right? And the risk appetite is lower here. So there are names which shine and, you know, look big in US, but obviously that kind of talent is everywhere in India.
But would be a shame to miss, you know, miss this because we're so ahead when it comes to tech. And we are, whatever, all these companies you talk about, be it Google, Microsoft, Apple, whatever, they're powered a lot by Indians and Chinese from behind.
I think it comes to fund and risk appetite, right? India doesn't have it, so that's why you don't have those names here. What you have here is so many of us, right? We are like, there's one Google and there are like 100 Indian companies which add up to that one Google, because we are so many of us solving so many problems globally, kind of adds up like that. And just because we don't have that kind of risk appetite.
Thank you. This has been really, really helpful. I know to my viewers, I said it's like a master course, a crash masterclass, a crash course on AI, and we did digress. But this, whilst we wanted to know more about what artificial intelligence is and what the future holds, I think it was also important to know, as I said, it's artificial intelligence and all things related. So it's very important to know where we're heading from here, what the business aspect of this is, where India is placed, and how we can leverage on this. So I think we've touched pretty much on all these aspects. We didn't touch on one aspect, Kawaljit, and that is the future of artificial intelligence itself. I read that there is something called, what's in the pipeline, ASI and AGI. Which is artificial superintelligence and artificial general intelligence. Would you mind just spending a few minutes explaining what those are and the difference between the two?
First comes AGI, then ASI. AGI would be artificial general intelligence. By general, what it means is right now, AI is really good at specific tasks. I know we touched upon DeepMind in between somewhere. But for example, DeepMind is amazing in trying to kind of figure out how human body, proteins, protein folding, all that works, right? It's very specific and it's great at that. But if you ask AI to do some kind of coronavirus, you know, analysis, it may not be great, right? I'm just using a hypothetical situation where artificial intelligence may be great at something,
Right.
but it may not be great at others. So artificial general intelligence means when it is good enough or great enough to compete with human intelligence. So AGI is the point where artificial intelligence touches or surpasses human intelligence, which is another term for it is
Yeah.
called singularity, which
Right.
is, you reach a point where they're as good as us. Then comes ASI, super intelligence, where once you reach that level, like humans, because it's infinitely scalable, everything starts accelerating, right? Like
Right.
how it took us maybe 3 decades to understand human protein folding or structures, right? Or it took us 20 years or whatever, 10 years for, let's say, for us to put man on the moon. It takes generations for creating new science or new technologies. Once we reach AGI, and you have machines which can work overnight 24/7, and millions of these machines instead of one Einstein or one Berners-Lee, like instead of that you would have all these machines working 24/7, and suddenly intelligence becomes super, right? So at that stage everything is possible, right? Like you could solve climate crisis, you could solve aging, you could solve time travel, you could solve, right? Like all that becomes in the realm of possibility. So super intelligence comes next because it will suddenly change how humans live, or what happens then most people don't know. AGI is kind of on the horizon, right? People predict by 2030, which is not very far, 5 years from now we may hit AGI, which is computers can be as good as humans. You can already see it, right? It in all these kinds of benchmarks, it is getting as good as humans in science tests, in legal exams, in health exams, right? Like intelligence is matching humans, but to get to full general intelligence where you can have your own thought and invent new things, that's probably 5 years from now. So that's AGI.
That's what Geoffrey Hinton, who from the UK, who apparently is the one who's godfather of artificial intelligence, he said, and quite worryingly, that humans will become second to artificial intelligence.
I mean, like he kind of said those provocative things so that people take the risks more seriously. People or some companies have been very casual about the AI models they are inventing or putting it out. Because he championed and created the technologies which led to these breakthroughs, he is kind of championing that do not ignore the risks, right? Think about the safety, the guardrails, these kill switches as they are called, that you can switch off AI if it gets out of hand, right? Like he has been kind of saying this to all the big tech and the governments, that you need more kind of supervision,
checks and balances. Yes.
So that's why he sounds provocative, but it's very important for people to be on that side where it's not all optimistic. You need to think of not everything is about solving cancer and climate models. It can lead to dystopia also. All the scenarios in Terminator, things like that. So that needs to be thought through.
Right.
And I mean, people are listening to him, which is amazing.
Well, it's definitely very, very disruptive. And I think, just to conclude, I will say that there's enormous amount of uncertainty. It's a huge technological revolution we're experiencing, and as you said, we're very fortunate that you've seen so much, from computers to apps to now AI. But I will say that we should have an appetite for it. We should embrace AI, but with caution.
Yes.
Is that right?
That's a good way to end this. Yes.
Yeah. Would that be right? Thank you for coming, Kawaljit. It's been great. I really hope that our viewers have benefited. I definitely have. Needless to say, you do make me feel quite outdated, because I think there's a lot of catch up to do from where we are today and where it's all moving so fast. And I think definitely Gen Z will have this advantage because they're so quick with adapting, because that's the world they've grown up in. Thank you for this lovely masterclass. I don't think I want to apply for a job as an AI techie, but I definitely feel more confident today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.